to Helicon West. Welcome. This is our first Helicon West of the spring 2014 season, and we're very happy to see you all here. We have a few thank yous we want to start with. First of all, Joseph Anderson in the back of the Logan Library. Give us our venue. Thank you, Joseph. Tonight we have a pretty exciting event because our own Liz Stevens is back in town and she's reading for us. And she's the reason we're having tonight's meeting on the third Thursday instead of the second Thursday of the month. So I hope too many people didn't get confused. I see many of you are here, so I'm very grateful to you for being here on the third Thursday, even though this is a non-standard evening. Yeah. Yeah, we always do the second and fourth, and so you're very important because we don't often break the rules of Helicon. Yeah, I know. Okay, so first of all, I want to tell you that next week you want to be here as well because Darren Edwards is coming back to town. And yeah, and he's one of our Helicon West people from way back. And Liz is one of our Helicon West people from way back because she co-founded Helicon West The Heat at the Amphitheater in 2006, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
It was fabulous. So, Logan Library, USU Writing Center, the LT and JTD Endowment for the Mountain West Center for Regional Studies, which is where Liz has been doing a guest artist gig, are the sponsors and partners of tonight's program. We're going to start with Melody Grolich, who's going to introduce Liz for us. Melody teaches American Lit, Western American Lit. She's at the university and she's one of our favorite professors up there. She chairs lots and lots of graduate committees. And she will introduce Liz and then we'll go right into the open mic. And I have the open mic sign up and there's still some spots left. So don't get mad and leave if you haven't signed up and you're worried because there might still be room for you. So first of all, Melody, come on up.
I am delighted to introduce Liz Stevens tonight. She's been one of my favorite graduate students here at USU, along with Susan Anderson and others. For those of you who have read Liz Stevens' fine memoir, The Days Are God's, a title borrowed from Emerson, set in Cache Valley, you know that when Liz first arrived after 10 years in LA, now several years ago, to get a graduate degree in American Studies, she was quite starry-eyed and excited about the place, particularly her homestead in Wellsville, which she rapidly stocked with horses, goats, chickens, and cats. 3 dogs came with her from LA. She planted a garden and communed with her neighbors about rural life. She often came to school with dirt under her fingernails, as I do myself sometimes, wearing boots in which she mucked stalls. Then at some point, apparently unable to be bothered with it, she cut off all her hair. Fortunately for her at that time, we had another American Studies graduate student who dyed her hair fluorescent pink and green, which allowed Liz's eccentricities to fade into the background. The idea of becoming native to a place, to borrow from Wes Jackson, or as native as possible, would become central to her MA thesis, where she laid the foundation for The Days Are God's, completed during her work on a creative nonfiction PhD at Ohio State. During that time, she layered on further key themes, attending to the dailiness of life, hence the title, The Days Are God's, and to those animals so central to her home place, who, along with the daughters she gave birth to during her time in Cache Valley, as she was completing an MA degree, eccentric, no hair and I couldn't be along with the daughter, those animals became concrete examples of her larger themes of life and death. I see her work as part of a key turn in cultural studies of the U.S. West toward exploring the roles of animals in our lives and to animal rights. Indeed, Liz says her current essays, maybe she's reading from them tonight, will lead to a second book about urban wildlife, since she's now back in LA, supporting her husband's acting career and teaching at Glendale College, and animal humanist studies. While at Ohio, she was managing editor for the journal Brevity, published an essay, 10 Years I'll Never Get Back, those were her LA years, in the important journal Fourth Genre, and just to show not much has changed, has a new essay in an upcoming anthology called Dirt. And yes, it's really about dirt. Liz's books will be for sale at the end of her reading at the back, so please help me welcome Liz Stevens.
Thank you for the introduction, Melanie. You're much kinder than I thought you would be.
Yeah, those were only some of her eccentricities.
She'll give you the unedited remarks later, I'm sure. Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to read a little bit from the book, and also a separate essay, but again, trying not to take too much of your time because I want to hear all of your readings as well. I do have one essay I'm going to read this week, or during this time, that's absolutely central on the animal studies. I'm going to read that next Wednesday at campus. The piece that I'm going to read external from the book, though, is related to that in ways that you'll see. So, okay. So, from the book, and I'll read 3 small sections and introduce them. Chapter title. Let me get my fingers ready here. Okay. The history of other people. Houses in Wellsville sell quickly. The grown children of local families are standing by, waiting to snap them up, often having moved away to distant Millville, 10 miles, or Providence, 12 miles, or returning from church missions halfway around the world, dying to get back for the companionship, the history, the babysitting. I can simply not imagine living down the block from my parents, sensing the makings of a bad television sitcom in which grown kids sulk like teenagers, that would be me in this scenario, and bring their laundry to their mothers, and parents sneak vodka tonics and cigarettes inside the privacy of drawn blinds. Of course, that's not what's happening here in Mormon country, right? And I feel something surprisingly akin to envy while watching women with babies slung on their hips walk down their own driveways and up another a block away, over and over, all day long. On the other hand, there's me, and others like me, that is to say, Californians. I'm not from California, but apparently if others' reactions here are to be trusted, any contact stains one with the mark of a place. I know how y'all are. A mark, a behavior, a way of talking, a way of dressing that will probably take years to wear off. The epithet, snidely and loudly spit, Californians, is ubiquitous. Part of me is waiting to see this mythical creature that apparently takes over whole real estate areas by force, sneaks into shops and changes price tags ever higher, ruins roads, drives as if chased by the devil, causes box stores to spring from dry earth, and mashes wildlife hidden on. And actually, I know the appearance of this devil is a problem in this valley. I sense the centrality of the issue to everyone here, and rather than steering clear and wide of it, I sneak under the wing of it, take it on as my own problem too, disingenuously pulling on the sheep's clothing of the language of it. Open space, preserving farmland, no second Walmart. We know how that turned out. For all this, I don't feel like a wolf. I really want what these people want, and I'm not from California after all. I begin to talk about Los Angeles as if it's a mistake I made. The argument against newcomers, including me, of course, is this. The valley is going to be bursting from its seams soon, literally full, the ground taken and covered by new houses, huge chain stores, and more houses. But the houses keep selling to locals and newcomers alike, and as long as that's happening, someone will keep building, until they must stop, defeated, I imagine, only by the untenable terrain of the closely surrounding mountains. They'll build in a rush, a permanent tidal wave over the land, a matrix of changes overlaid onto the story of the earth itself, the buried green glass of mason jars, the tin cooking pans, the downed fence wire, the ghostly stone foundations glimpsed through tall grass, the bones of cattle and horses and humans. Eventually, no doubt when it's nearly too late, the small historical societies that are now the hobby of elderly ladies, informal branches of the ladies' relief societies in each local church ward, will get pissed. They'll get organized. They'll come out of their tabernacle and stake-building basement meeting halls, waving the yellowing paper of brittle family trees, photographs and Bibles, and demand an end to the ripping down of pioneer houses. Not in time for my house, probably, but maybe in time to keep the general character of at least Wellsville intact. In case they don't, though, I'm being careful to remember it the way I found it. I can't even pretend I know fully yet why I feel a personal investment here. And I know I didn't come early to the Valley. I'm not blind. I didn't even beat the McDonald's here. But I can't hold in my mind my time, this place for a few years, like a photograph or a small, slim book. And because it's my story and I get to choose, I can look backward rather than forward. Along with my precious present days, I can remember other people's histories and, weaving tightly, make them part of my own. Gardening. Bill is moody. He is literally, empirically, actually the first cowboy I have ever met up close. And so I pay close attention to him. The day we moved in, a neighbor chatting with us in the yard had waved his truck to a stop, and out climbed Bill and his two sons, all of them filthy and smelling mysteriously bad. A smell I learned later turned out to be horse piss and hoof shavings. But they didn't want to stop, but they did when asked, and stood ducking and averting their eyes until a wave of conversation that didn't include them set them free. Bill was a good listener, but the only thing he really wanted to talk about was horses. That suited us fine because there was absolutely nothing else we had in common. Still, he thought we were funny, and he needed our barn, as he'd used it with the permission of the previous owner for storing hay. So he hung around, and we hung around him. Our outsider status meant we got along with him because of his outsider status. We'd become outsiders by moving, and he became one by staying still. But we were always conscious of being a little careful around him. One day, when I finally had fellow graduate students out to my house in the country, they were often unwilling to make the 15-minute drive. We stand at my new vegetable garden poking at the worms. Bill drives by, and I'm pleased when he eases his car to a stop in the dirt, just as he would if I were alone. You don't want them worms in there, he muses. They eat all the nutrients. No, my smart and mouthy friend pipes up. The worms make the nutrients when they eat stuff and poop and die. We all stand there. Let it go. I pray to both of them. Bill is wrong about this. I can't imagine how he could be so wrong, but he knows a lot I don't know, because he's done work none of us coddled white-collar people could imagine or consider. Shooting starving and damaged calves comes to mind. Work we rightly or wrongly valorize. My grad school friend, though, has a bright mind, a kind heart, and was taught to speak up when he knew a thing, and incidentally was raised on a hippie farm full of vegetables and chickens, and was only out here in the country with me, to go fishing at the reservoir and not pick a fight. If, once Bill drives away, later, another day, either of them ever says to me, mouthy, smart-aleck Democrat college kids, or ignorant, superstitious country bumpkin, I will have no camp to sit in. I will sit my uncomfortable butt right on the sharp fence and not say a word. But in both scenarios, I will feel like fighting.
Is that Laban?
Yeah, that's Laban. I omitted the Cather talk because I didn't have.
Oh, right, that's right. Okay.
Every time I mention Laban in the book, I've got Cather in there on the page somewhere. Because that's what he scared me with, so I figured it's only fair. Cather talk. All right, I've got one more. Maybe I'll just go to this other long piece here. I'm going to go to this longer piece here. I certainly want to hear you read it. I don't want to get the timing wrong. So, okay. This is a separate piece that will ultimately become part of a second work on urban wildlife. Between me and the rest of the world, the whole of space and stars and black holes, and the way those trigger an existential crisis in me when I'm left to consider my maker too long. And also, good old boys in high clearance trucks that seem made to pluck away Hansels and Gretels. And also, animals is the thin wall of a tent. My daughter says, "Can I tell you something?" And if it's anything like what she's been saying, I'd like the answer to be no. But I dutifully say yes. "I don't get camping," she says. It's our third solo camping trip since spring. I say solo, and then I rethink it, and then I leave it. because we exist in that weird land where we are not each other and yet are not other people even more so, where we are more like each other than anyone else will ever be, but are careful to remind ourselves out loud, you can like that, I don't have to. I like it for you, but I don't like it for me. She is 6. I'm old enough to know better. The first time we camped alone this spring, we drove into the glorious clear air of a desert sunset and stepped out of the air into the 100-degree evening heat with a light step, feeling blessed and at home in comparison to the red tourists we found at the visitor center where we stopped to get a local map. The ranger handed me a line drawing and with a glee only another woman could understand, said, "You can camp anywhere." She looked at me conspiratorially. Just 100 feet from the main road and not in a wash. Otherwise, anywhere. "It's all safe?" I asked, even as I wasn't clear from what I meant. "Yes," she said, looking, and I don't mean in a crazy way, as if she wanted to throw her arms up in benediction to send me forth. I got it. I get it. This is freedom. Another ranger walked by, an older man, and looked at my shoes and my girl child. "I don't know," he said. "There's a campground on the south end with toilets and other pads and such." "Oh, do you guys still swear in Helicon West?" "Okay, fuck him." Things have changed. My hiking boots are in the car. My child can pee on the ground and have her pants back up in less than 60 seconds flat. We're out of here. Immediately after setting up the tent, we whip off our shirts to tanks and bound down a wash to look for snakes. I follow my daughter's curiosity just past the obvious end of the wash, but turn to look where we've come from, marking the view. She's on the ground doing just what I hoped for her, wondering if the plant she's looking at ever burned and how long it takes to regrow. I sit with her, and then I stand at the twilight noise of coyotes nearby. Funny how different things look in other lights. Funny how fast civilization can be lost to us. The feeling of running and standing still at once. The sound of your voice talking out loud and the dissonance of your mind scrambling for signals. The mundane practicality of water. "What is it?" she asks. "Let's go back," I say. "Can we not walk by the coyotes?" she asks. The coyotes are one of the potential paths between us and our site. Would she walk there if I asked? Of course she would. God, the wind. We watch the nylon push in toward us like a hand is pressing it, then it sucks back fast and snaps back in again. We complain for 2 hours before it gets funny. "It's like a sail," I say, suddenly feeling the sweep of it, its roots in the sky miles away. "It's like it's biting your head," she laughs, when we realize it's now dipping so far my head is touching the sides from a laying position. When a pinpoint of green laser light hits the rock above us, it takes everything in me not to flip to my hands and knees, snatch her off the ground, and run to the truck before she has time to say what. My emergency mind is scanning for recognition, and all I come up with is knowing that some high-powered guns have lasers to focus, or maybe they don't, but there's a born identity thing happening. Why us? Who knows? I have faith not in news, but in statistics, read correctly, which show how many people stay safe. Still, randomness scares me, mostly because I believe in it. I believe one beer, or one country song, or one hard look can put a wrecked human in a dark place. And I know for sure at that moment, all I know for sure at that moment is that my car is between me and the direction from which the light comes. I hear a light laugh from campers I didn't know were near, maybe the length of a football field away. With all these miles, there they are. And then the wind dies down with a sigh. My girl sleeps like a baby, she always does, because I tell her she's safe. It's the second time now that we've been to this park, and I've chosen a spot where I can expect no green laser lights because I can see the approach of every vehicle for at least a mile. Ghost Mountain. My 6-year-old doesn't know the name of the mountain under which we sleep because why complicate things? Rising at our back is a foothill of boulders, and as darkness falls, bats burst out of them in fluttering waves. They're like dark butterflies, she says. I can't top that, so I just say, yes. There's someone over there, she says. My head snaps up. Something, I say, irritation masking my thudding heart. Something over there, not someone. It's different. Is it a bear, she says? There aren't any bears here on all this hot, flat ground, but this is the child who not too long ago, as we walked through a stable full of horses, asked thoughtfully, so is it ponies that have the wings? It's a bush, I answer. That's a big fat manzanita. Oh, she says, doubtfully. We want very much to just sleep on the ground this time. We know the desert will be windy, and as the flapping of the tent was all that kept us awake before, sleeping out under the stars seems like the obvious solution. We're a few hundred yards from one of the most moving places I've ever stood on earth, the 1,000-year wintering grounds of a local tribe. Standing over the kitchen rock, riddled with grinding holes, you could now see part of a modern valley below. I had reception on my phone while I looked at the pictographs. In any case, this spot feels full of humanity to me, years of crossings underfoot, but none presently there but ours. It's my favorite, ancestral humans who move me theoretically, but can't bug me now. I watch my child huddling on the ground in a bright pink sleeping bag that we fought over because she wanted princesses and I wanted camo, or at least, God help me, one solid color. It's been 2 hours of looking at constellations and satellites and whipping my head around every time she says there's someone over there. I'm remembering there's an article I've read that says by the time our children are old, it may be impossible to see the Milky Way in the sky due to air and light pollution in cautious development. I picture street lights shining into the heavens, and security lights on bare concrete and border rivers, and beams of scattershot non-signals sent into space from the frenzied, unintentional culture we are. I think about my arm strength, a necessitous, not sufficient, while I play out horrible scenarios in my head involving meth and men and distance, closeness and car keys and horns honking too late. Oh, for a locked door. On top of this, I extend my fear of death, my horror of that unknown, just because I can. I'm already going down the rabbit hole, so why not bring it too? It's always there, because it's dark and I lack control of the situation, and my daughter is more dear to me than my fear of death scares me, and I feel maudlin tears roll down my cheeks into my ears in the dark. I'm somewhere between the teenage martyrdom of imagining my own death and who might show up at the funeral, what will I wear, and the painfully grown-up epiphany that tells me this, all of this, is all there is, and it has to be enough, because claustrophobically, there is no alternative. I am in full-blown attack as I hear her mumble through the nylon of her sleeping bag. I'm scared. I am too. It turns out the tent cannot protect me from anything really except myself. I need it between me and the reality of the sky. In the car, a few minutes later, I see her with her head on the seat, eyes open and face turned up. Sleeping bag wrapped over her head like a small Russian stacking doll. She's blissfully warm now. We fall asleep shortly after she says musingly, I see another satellite, and then, I see a constellation of a vampire cat. When we camp alone again, it is because I finally had enough of waiting for other people to say yes. We pass no one once we turn off the main highway road near our campground, into our campground. There's no running water, no toilet here, and the last mile is unpaved, so I'm not surprised. I'll be a little surprised by morning when we've seen no one for almost 20 hours. I am in LA County. By the end, I've begun to wonder if it was finally the night of the apocalypse down below. We drive through the entire campground twice, bouncy with the pleasure of having our own pick of a lot, even on a marked campground. We still pick the one at the far end. We set up the tent, and then because she has decided she will not tolerate flies, could have told me that before, by the way, she will not walk the trail to the creek I know is nearby. So we stare at the tent and sit in the sun. Of course, there are flies here too. An hour ago, we were getting gas at rush hour on Foothill Boulevard, and now there was silence. I suddenly vividly hear my friend Becky's laugh and picture us all around a campfire last summer. Lately, my 6-year-old has been asking me about death. Mostly, luckily, she asks me in the dark before bedtime. I am, of course, trying to avoid passing on the legacy of my own fear. I've cobbled together some version of what I believe and what my husband, he of the chaos theory and energy never dies, and I'm not worried anyway, school of thought says he believes. We go to church, not Mr. Chaos Theory, but the kid and I, because I was comfortably raised Episcopalian and it still fits, lovingly traditional, but with gay rights and theology debates and wine parties. Still, my best bet for death marries my religious leanings to my practical self. I pray for consciousness of a kind I cannot imagine, but must ground it in what I presently know. Life continues cyclically. We become part of all things, I tell her. We are all everywhere, I say. We will still be here. But looking at her swatting flies out in the nature I'd deified, I knew it wasn't good enough. I felt the ground drop out from under me as the blindfold was pulled. I didn't fucking want to be everywhere. And I damn sure didn't want to be left alone here, not any part of me. If wherever I'm going, I'm not her mother, it isn't good enough. And if I can't be with humans, heaving in their fly-swatting aggravation, so I'm well and truly screwed. It's been an hour before I wake back up, eventually. I can't place the noise at first, intimately familiar. We're both awake, and I watch her not move as the noise continues, the slide of a touch on the nylon wall of the tent. The coyotes are here. This time, now that it's a possibility, she doesn't know to ask if this might be a bear. I can picture for one hot second, the only bear I've ever seen in the wild, punching its way up to the tree line at the top of a field in Maryland. The thought of that, of bareness at all, keeps me frozen. I like coyotes a lot, and I'm happy to yell at them to keep them out of these unsafe, for them, places. But truly, it's nearly on my head. This makes it so hard to think. Also, I imagine myself saying to her, I'm going to yell now, get ready, it's going to be loud. And then know she'd hear the fear in my yell, and it would scare her more than the slow, wet, sliding sniff already has. Who the hell do I think I am? What right have I got to scare this child so often, while I try to prove to myself I can what? We lay there holding hands. I have my useless, out-of-range pacifier of a cell phone in my hand. She admits to me she doesn't get camping, and there in the midst of my deep crisis of faith in nature and God and the story I'd built for myself about being content to be part of all things crumbling before me, I'll be damned if I don't either. We listen for a long time to the coyotes exploring our campsite, my arm around her, us both in a long line in the center of the tent. When they go, I listen to the silence for another long time until I'm sure that's all there will be. I consider again my strengths and weaknesses. In the morning, we are exuberant in the sunlight. We are brave. We make fire and coffee. We carry our individual existential crises around lightly in the light. Later that summer, we camp, finally, with others. This is now as easy, literally, as a walk in a park. She pees on the ground at the least provocation and carries paper in her grimy pocket to write down things she sees. I drink cups of whiskey at the fire, my favorite thing, which I don't do alone with her on my watch. When the coyotes howl, other children shriek, and she smiles. As I set up my tent, a friend of a friend, someone I don't know firsthand, watches me snap and thread together pieces as I talk animatedly to him. I can't do all that, he says. I never camp. I mean, like, I have never camped. I'm glad you're next to my tent. But he doesn't know. I need him there. With his I'm an architect Prius parked above us, in his nice glasses and his cute hiking boots and his exotic but friendly wife and brand new baby wailing away on the air mattress. I need him in his tent next to me for a little while longer.
Oh, that was marvelous. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you for having me. I rescheduled.
We're going to wait for that book excitedly. All right, we'll go right into the open mic. I know this was so good. I feel like my legs are going to fall
Will you
off.
tell people that Liz will sign books in the back?
Yes, I will tell them that. So, Liz, you know, probably the best place for you to sit at this time would be back by your books.
Okay.
And if anybody wants to get a book, Liz will sign it for you back there during the open mic and after the open mic. So I would get a book if I were you. I have one, so I'm not going to get one, but that's because I already have one. You should get one. Thank you, Liz. Okay, we'll go to the open mic, and I'll read 3 people at a time. And I wanted to mention, and this mic just reminded me, that if you if this doesn't fit right by your mouth, that's what I wanted to do, is fit right by your mouth. See this little doohickey over here? You can loosen that and put that mic where you want it, and then you can tighten that. And you can also go like this. So use the mic and speak into it. First, John LaForce, then Matthew Allred, then Diane Hardy. Come up one at a time.
This is a poem entitled Guard Post 2. Hell's a place I've been to. Easy to find, easy to enter. Not so easy to leave, though. It's smack dab in the middle of bumfuck Egypt. A triangle-shaped berm raised up 8 foot high. The trash pile fire burning merrily. Plastic, old food, spit bottles. Bags of your own shit and piss. That smell covers your clothes just like the red-brown helmet Afghanistan dust. Corporal comes around at 1800. LaForce, Jepson, you've watched tonight. Balls to 06 and don't forget your NVGs. Aye, Corporal, we'll be there, you say. Then curse your luck after he trots away. 3 hours of sleep later, you're standing tall in front of post 2. 50 pounds of gear and a rifle. It's cooled down to 103 degrees. You still stink like hell. Kenyon, Beagle, you're relieved. LaForce and Jepson, you're posted. Corporal leaves as easily as he came. A dip can and sunflower seeds come out. Hoagie bait to while away the hours. You talk, like always, of hopes and dreams, history and fears. Why Jepson hates the father that abandoned him. The latest news from home. A far better place than this. You talk about girls, the mythical unicorn. It's been 6 months since you saw one outside of a Playboy magazine. Talking keeps back the darkness, and you silently pray, God, if this night I should survive, well and good indeed. But if to die, let me do so in a pile of empty brass, surrounded by dead enemies. The hours drag on like a dead mule pulling a plow. Jepson smokes his last cigarette somewhere near 0415. Flick of the wrist, and here comes the grizzly mint dip. Gotta make it to 06 awake. Haji Baba and the 40 Taliban want you dead. Complacency kills. The gun truck you're standing in was a baking hot oven all day. And even this early in the morning, you're still sweating like whores in a church. Sweat staining your camis, your Kevlar, your gloves. Gonna be another scorcher of a day. Oh God, what you'd give for a kiddie pool full of ice. Blue-banded twilight appears and your spirit sore. Soon you can eat and sleep. Rosy-cheeked Dawn is close behind her sister. Boots crunch on gravel. A new voice is heard. LaForce, Jepson, you're relieved. Thompson, Bizzle, you're posted. And the burden lifts from your shoulders as you climb down. Guard post is done for now.
My name's Matt Allred. Brian says I have 7 minutes, and I think I can do this in 7 minutes, so here we go. Typically I write kind of bizarre fiction. This is one of my first serious nonfiction attempts, so. Wagon wheels and deep ruts. I must have been 14 the night Brittany returned my call, as she always did when I left a message with one of her siblings, or worse, with her recently divorced mother. I remember this phone call in particular because it was disappointing. Obviously, I'd been disappointed before, not being able to go to X or not being able to buy Y, but this may have been the first time I realized that even when a person wants something in a pure, deep way, there are no guarantees. I was in my bedroom listening to my parents' Phil Collins' greatest hits collection with the CD player set to repeat all, and playing a rather difficult video game on my Dreamcast called Jet Grind Radio with the sound turned off. I'd like to look at this scene and laugh a bit at the scrawny blonde kid version of me listening to an album that was somehow grown up and dated all at once, and playing a game that, despite the bright characters and goofy colors, was for an older, more talented gamer than he, but I know what he was about to hear and feel, and I'm still sorry for him. I see the mixed excitement and gloom in his face as he grabs the wireless headset the instant it begins to ring and reads Brittany's last name in the dull caller ID window. Though the situation described in the lyrics is much different, Collins's "In the Air Tonight" sets what was perhaps the perfect tone for me that evening. I can't tell you how Brittany felt or what she did in between someone telling her I called and picking up the phone. She might have stared at it in her hand in a darkened family room or bedroom for 10 minutes, and when she finally started to dial, she might have held each button in long, exaggerated movements. She might have rolled her eyes when she got the message, thinking she should have guessed I'd call while she was out. She might have immediately snatched up the handset in the kitchen without a second thought, her brothers and sisters and mother going about their business all around her. I probably said hello or something like it, but I would have pretty adeptly turned the conversation to the real meat, trying to convince her to date me. I liked her and she knew it. Perhaps like isn't the most honest way to say it. Our future spanned before me like a great adventure. I appreciated her wiry, somehow shadowy figure, her short, dark brown hair, her almost too pale skin. I knew not everyone found her as pretty as I did, but I believed her to be a standard of beauty nonetheless. She was sometimes bad, but I didn't care. I'd help her be good. She was sometimes rude, but I didn't care. I'd wait for her kindness. She was broken from her parents' divorce, but I didn't care. I'd take her broken. I'd take her no matter what. I saw within her a complexity of human nature I wanted to spend my life trying to untangle. That night in particular, I was prepared to wage a battle for her affection. After whatever pleasantries passed between us, I settled the phone in the pocket between my neck and shoulder and tried to finally pass the same level of jet grind radio I'd been working on for an hour. Phil serenaded me with his almost silly, almost touching love songs while we talked, but Brittany didn't hear him. Our conversation quickly found its normal rut as surely as wagon wheels find the deep grooves of a well-used, familiar road. I made my case for us again. Brittany enjoyed our conversations, I think, and sometimes felt she didn't have a closer friend than me. But as I begged for a quick kiss or a chance to dazzle or just another day for her to not make a final decision about us, she resisted. My wife can tell you now, as could my ex-girlfriends and a handful of other close friends, that I can at times be a great persuader of persons. I don't say this to be brag, to be blunt. It's not really as enviable a trait as you might imagine, but because you must see her as I saw her, someone who could stand up to me. This was something I admired, something that only fueled my need to get the W. I don't know exactly why she didn't want me in that way, and I didn't know then. In the LDS Church, which we both did and still do belong to, youth are counseled not to go on dates, let alone pair up, until the age of 16. That might have had something to do with her reluctance, but I don't think so. Neither of us took the counsel as seriously as we felt we should have. The answer might instead lie in the way she accepted my compliments only with the appropriate cavats of her unworth, or in the way she wouldn't smile at me for more than a second or two at a time, or in the way she sometimes got so angry when I'd try to get close that she'd swear at me and walk away or hang up. The answer might, ironically, lie in the way she had always returned my calls but would not initiate them on her own. At some point during our long conversation that night, I said, "How many kids do you want?" This was typical of the inappropriate questions I might ask her on any given night. I don't remember her answer, and perhaps she wouldn't tell me or said she didn't know, but she asked me what I wanted in turn. 7 or 8, I said. She didn't respond for a moment. Then she laughed in that adult way of hers I never failed to find enticing. She said, "How are you going to get them where they need to go?" She was no doubt considering the logistics of soccer practices, school plays, and all the other big family problems that never burdened my thoughts. I said, "Well, we'll just get a van." She was shocked. She was shocked and turned inexplicably vicious. I don't remember what she said exactly, but what she meant to say, what she wanted to say, had she the words, was, "How dare you implicate me in your future family, in your happiness and your idyllic perfect hope." I felt the shift in the tension coming over the phone line implicit in her tone, but I didn't understand. Something was happening, though. After my months of heartfelt pursuit, something was actually happening. Through the entire conversation, I listened to the divisively nostalgic music and struggled in vain against the same impossibly difficult level of jet grind radio, mocked by the game's playful nature and rambunctious attitude. The conversation continued. Perhaps I tried to backtrack, reword, change subjects, but like that wagon stuck in the ruts, I couldn't stop or turn. And too late, I realized what I thought was an old, familiar wagon trail was actually a new, dangerous road. A road that went somewhere darker and more final than I'd traveled with Brittany before. I probably said please in a voice that hadn't yet deepened, with a heart that had yet to be contradicted. I don't remember much else about the phone call, but all of a sudden, things were different between us. In the weeks and months to come, I finally abandoned my pursuit, something I had thought I'd never resort to. I was in pain because, though I had a ready supply of denial in the storeroom, I was already accepting that it wasn't going to happen. But how could I have understood what the conversation meant to her? What does it mean to be so incensed by an invitation of happiness born from the true love of a close friend? What does it mean when a girl is wounded by kind words, denied by the hope of acceptance? I learned that night that wanting her could not make her mine, but what I should have learned was how to listen. If I could go back, I would turn the music off, shut the game down, I'd sit up, I'd listen. I'd tell the horses to stop dragging the wagon anywhere, and I'd stop asking for things. And I'd say, "Brittany, you are not your mother, and whoever you marry will not be your father." I would say, "You are worth loving." I would say, "Please don't worry about me."
Let's see.
You can do it, Diane.
Women of my age don't know how to do this. That's what we need men for. But I did it. Art. I'm feline. A smuggled cat. Not allowed where I live. Palatial living, humph. Fancy name for a trailer park, huh? Diane, my mother, got me 5 years ago through a newspaper ad. I came free of charge, cost her not 1 red cent. That made her happy because she's tight. She thinks money is crass, rarely talks about it other than to mutter something about evil and roots. She often talks over my head, like when I howl about eating dry cat food. She says, "Don't be ungrateful, Ara. When I was a kid, people drowned whole litters of baby cats." Completely off the subject, and shouldn't a writer know better? Within days of getting me, she had me fixed. Ridiculous, because being contraband, I'm housebound, never been outdoors. I only learned about that sex stuff last summer when she held me up to the window where we watched a couple of cats in the grip of ecstasy. At first it looked interesting. The big orange striped one clamping down on the smaller cat's head, had her right between his jaws. Just envisioning a fight made my hair stand on end. I was howling as loud as they were, but safe on the inside. Then the mean one quit biting, and I think went to sleep on the other one's back. Much ado about nothing, so I made my way to the computer monitor for a nap. Diane got a real kick out of it, watching until the big one left. Different strokes for different folks, I guess. Sleeping's my life, you could say. Diane, Mom, claims I do too much, but she's jealous because she can't sleep through a night. Needing to pee gets her up, and Facebook keeps her up. At 3 in the morning, for God's sake. Thinking I've forgotten how to play, she buys stupid toys to intrigue me. One worked for a short time. A red dot circling the room had me running helter-skelter. That is until I realized she was controlling it. That's when I ignored her, and between you and me, that was hard as hell. I'm not your ordinary run-of-the-mill cat. Diane's not ordinary either. We're both gifted, you know, psychically. She says she checked out cats before me and none of them spoke to her soul. According to her, I was crying inconsolably. The kid who was giving me and my siblings away actually tried to dissuade her. He pointed at me. That one is the smallest, the least ready to wing. She's a runt. Diane paid no attention. She and I bonded pure and simple. She says I immediately settled down, nesting comfortably in the palm of her hand. On the way home, she proclaimed, "I need you, tiny girl. You, a small, smoky ball of fluff with eyes of karmic bent, to atone my deficit. I'll call you Ara." It hasn't all been rosy, though. Diane's preoccupied with music, spending hours at the piano, oblivious to my cries for attention. It's hard to get noticed, period. I can do it when she talks on the phone by biting her foot, not hard, just enough to irritate. She'll yell, "You little shit!" and toss me across the room. But you can't count on it working when she's playing the piano. Most times she's unaware. A while back I gave in and started listening to the music. I rather like the highbrow stuff of Beethoven. When Diane plays Fur-Elise or the Moonlight Sonata, I come running, sometimes I sing, which she doesn't notice either. She's fanatic about books. They're all over the place, even on our bed. I can't understand the traction. They're okay to lie on, but not as good as a box you can climb into. On weekends we get company. Her kids treat me like an interloper rather than a sister. The grandkids are the worst, hissing back at me, making faces, pointing, and trying to get at my belly. In defense, I once bit one and got shut in the bedroom. I was punished, not him. In spite of everything, Diane and I have gotten closer over time, and you can tell it by looking at me. Fat and contented like her, I guess. I used to sleep curled up in a ball, but now I lie stretched out flat, even on my back. Diane laughs once she said, "You're letting it all hang out, huh, Ara?" As I said, she's psychic like me, knows when the phone's going to ring and who will be calling. Once she ran to comb her hair and put on lipstick, nearly stepped on me. When I yelled in protest, she said, "Get out of my way, company's coming." And sure enough, Tim, our writer friend, showed up a minute later. I love him. Although I've never been outdoors, I had an encounter with a yellow cat last summer. I was watching a robin out front when this big guy jumped up on the porch. Viciously, we fought through the screen until Diane, hearing the ruckus, chased the ugly one away. I fled under the bed and stayed for hours. I wondered if my tail would ever go back to normal. Diane often sings to me while we're in our chair. She owns hundreds of CDs. My all-time favorite one is of Jim Reeves. He sings, "Out where the bright lights are glowing, you're drawn like a moth to a flame." A moth? Where? I'd like to get my hands on that. Last year, a major crisis bonded me and Diane together like glue, you might say. Being psychic, I always know when she's going to leave me before she hauls out the suitcase. I've tried lying on it to protest her leaving. I've also hidden, refusing to say goodbye. Neither has worked. Anyway, last September when she left, I knew this time was different. Felt it, and I was right. Instead of driving her car, she went away with Glade. Every few days, he'd let himself into our house and call, "Where's my good kitty?" The first time it happened, I fell for it and came running, but never again. Hiding under the bed, I thought, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You know, I'm pretty smart. I said that better than that other guy. Who was he? Oh yeah, President Bush. While at the house, Glade would set out food and fresh water. Then he'd start shoveling shit out of my litter box. Within a minute, he'd be gagging and cussing like a preacher. Revenge is beautiful. Well, Mom, Diane's absence wore on both of us. When she came home 3 weeks later, I was hoarse from crying and wild with fear. I wasn't about to let her touch me. Come to think of it, she didn't even try. She looked terrible, had to use a walker just to go from one chair to the bathroom, and she winced with every step. Worse yet, she stared straight ahead all day. No riding, playing the piano, nothing. When the telephone rang, she didn't answer it, and Glade had to use his key to get in the house because she wouldn't go to the door. He'd come in and heat up a can of chicken noodle soup and sit and watch her eat it. I knew then there was something wrong because she used to eat all the time, even in the night. After a week, Glade was tired of it, pissed off royally, in fact. Mom, you're going to promise me you won't do anything bad, or you have to go live with Renee so she can watch you. Now, which will it be, goddammit? When she didn't answer, he yelled, "Either way, your cat will be gone because none of us kids can take her. We already have animals and she won't be able to adapt. You're all she's got." Diane looked at me, seemed to really notice me for the first time in a long time. I quit licking myself and watched her back. After what felt like an eternity, she softly said, "I promise, Glade, I won't do anything stupid," and broke down crying. He softened. "I know it's hard, Mom. Losing music must feel like death. But the doctors say when the drugs are finally out of your system, you might be able to play again. We've all got to be patient." Tammy had been at the hospital with Renee and Glade during Diane's knee surgery. She had to go back to Roosevelt to embalm people whom she said were dying like flies. I like that. Once I found one, a fly, on the windowsill. Killed it and ate it slicker than shit. Anyway, now all three kids were at our house. Diane was still in the staring into space days, but Glade and Renee were recovered enough to laugh a little. "When did you notice Mom wasn't all right?" Tammy asked. "Well, she was doing well, but in a lot of pain while in the hospital, so they gave her more drugs," Glade said. "Yeah," Renee agreed. 2 days later, they took her to Sunshine Terrace to recover. She was on massive doses of morphine, Valium, and Lortab, all at the same time. While in her room visiting, someone turned on the TV. It was LDS conference, and Diane blurted out, "Turn that off, it's a conspiracy." Tammy laughed. I've never even heard her use that word. We hadn't either, Glade said. I still feel bad about her nurse, said Renee, a sweet young girl, and the more patient she was, the worse Mom treated her. Called her Nurse Ratchet in pink. Oh, that's terrible, Tammy cried. Do you think she got it? Diane stared straight ahead in her own world. But I got it. I'm not called Ara for nothing. I looked over at One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, sitting on the bookcase shelf. Diane loves Jack Nicholson because they're both rebels. The nurse was probably too young to know the movie, Renee said. At any rate, the place got its fill of Mom and said they couldn't deal with her condition if she continued. Told us to start looking into lockdown places, didn't they, Glade? Yes, we knew the problem was her medication, but the nurse couldn't change it without the doctor's permission, and we couldn't get hold of the doctor. Finally, a day or so later, we reached him, and he cut out everything but the lower tab, and that's when she began to come around. I've got to finish. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, John and Matthew and Diane. Oh, I hope you finish that one for us next time and bring it back. Okay. Next we're having, and by the way, if you haven't bought books, you should buy books because the USU bookstore has this lovely woman back there selling books, and if she goes away having not sold any books, it might be sad for her, so you better buy some and sign it. Anne Stark is next, then Jessie Betts, and then Megan Burton.
A little piece here of my novel that I've been working on, and I read some of this earlier in the year. This is a story of, it's called Yellow Moon Backstage, and it's a story of two women from very different cultures. It's the confluence of their getting together through a play, through a theatrical play. One woman, Jessie, whom I've already introduced, is still grieving about a miscarriage that she had. This other woman is quite different, and she does not even acknowledge her name. And I decided in my novel to bring her to right to the beginning of it. I want to try that out on you guys. So I had to change my prologue, which is 2 paragraphs, and then I'm going to read 3 and a paragraph of the first chapter. Yellow Moon Backstage. The air was damp and stale with the ever-present Bay Area marine smell. I was cold, but the chill in my bones was now a permanent condition. Watching the long-limbed man charge toward me, I remembered the pulsating eyes of the possum I scared up in my grandfather's garage in Little Rock. Along with that glare, there was the same stink of terror emanating from his body as he came near. The toddler leaning against the car's metal surface swayed slightly back from the sound of a familiar voice approaching. The milkiness of the little boy's breath wafted in my face before he turned his head toward the low-pitched yell. In less than an instant, the man engulfed the small body in his brown, muscular arms, just as the driver of the car yanked the transmission into gear and simultaneously pressed the car's tires into motion. Profane street Spanish forced its way through the gap in the power-up window, over which I had no control. The nasty words for prostitute threatened to find meaning in my brain, but in that fogginess, they couldn't take hold. I could only mouth the familiar name that in my panic I screamed aloud, Raoul. Chapter 1, The Shadow Lady. She barely remembers the driver buckling her seatbelt and locking her in. The securing is necessary because with her shaking and imbalance she might fall out an open door. She still feels the brush of his hand over the side of her face, but with the wind and the chill she has become numb to him. She sees things through the sides of her eyes. She is a shotgun rider, an interloper. Words pass fast. Bright objects attract her, the juxtaposition of scarlet and yellow. The things she used to decipher like billboards are now charged with a second glance. Like the sign advertising Maytag appliances on the corner of San Pablo and Gilman. She used to like the man pictured there, a man in coveralls, plump but not too fat, leaning on a washing machine. He looked like one of her grandfather's white buddies. But she didn't have a grandfather anymore, and she didn't own a washing machine. All her fabrics were light and gauzy. She layered them. And when they were dirty, she washed and rinsed them out along with her underwear in the bathroom sink. She had one of those elastic cords attached to a pair of suction cups that stretched across the shower and attached to the tiles. She marveled at the strength of those small rubber cups, that they could sustain so much weight. Lately, everything had seemed heavy, even the nylon straps of the bra pushing on her shoulders. More colors pass in her periphery. She searches for the mural of the African woman, who looked a little like her grandmother, painted on the empty space between storefronts, but she hadn't seen her yet today. The driver is going too fast, or maybe she doesn't look in time. All she sees today is yellow. Her vision is almost completely clouded. Not only that, but she has stopped understanding the meaning of the letters on the signs. She has deliberately taught herself to unlearn the ability to read. It took time, but her efforts have paid off. In order to stop seeing the words, she started focusing on the letters themselves. She would mouth the sounds of the letters, much in the same way she did with the children in her care. Kangaroo, limousine, mango. She was always one to learn from sounds. Even in kindergarten, she was better at numbers than at words. At the time she learned to read, she wondered, what did a mango or a kangaroo have to do with a limousine? And what did any of them have to do with her? She was never seen them as a child. She grew up on a chicken farm and the kids teased her about it. They called her Chicken Twit. But her long-suffering teacher explained to her that kangaroos had little sacks on their bellies and mangoes grew in Guatemala and limousines took rich people to work. It was only later when she found herself inside a long black limo and she understood that there were other people who rode in them besides rich people. That was only the first in a whole series of definitions that no longer applied to her young life. To read was to take in the meaning of something written or printed. As she looked at the facades framed by the moving car window, she realized that while signs were printed, their meanings were written, in other words, able to penetrate her thoughts. The rainbow-shawled woman painted on a street corner mural could also be read. Her message was, "Flee, girl, to the safety of your mother's arms." But what if a mother wasn't someone to whom one could flee? In Little Rock, her mother sent her away to live with her father in Chicago. In Chicago, she discovered she had a brother. But why did she let her father take her away from the only home she ever had? Nevertheless, the happiest times she could recall were those hours she spent on the shore of Lake Michigan, strolling the marina at midnight by herself. After a dance performance, she'd escape, still all made up. Before anyone could stop her, she'd shimmy out the back of the theater. The rest of the girls had stayed for the attention of their fans. She pulled a wool overcoat tight around her neck, showing none of the oiled skin underneath. Standing at the shore with the boats moored side by side like dogs on a leash, passed by young couples walking side by side, she would stare beyond the dark waters and ask them, "Who am I?" She could hear Candy's voice answer, "You are a let woman." She didn't understand then what he meant. Candy owned a tux, a hat, a pair of Vuitton wingtips, a BMW, a condo, and her. She was like the boutonniere he kept in the fridge, he told her. For a while, she tried to figure out what he was talking about, and then she simply stopped trying. The flatness of the streets the driver chose sometimes resembled the streets under the rails of the L. But she had to keep reminding herself that she was riding down San Pablo Avenue from Oakland to Richmond by reading the business signs that passed in rapid succession. Bombay Music, Leslie Slavic, Everett and Jones Barbecue, Merle the Black Woman, Big's Liquor, Ivy Room, Incredible Ballrooms, Animal Farm, Auto Towing, Ashkenaz, Tea Fragrance, House, Catula, Mary May, Joy's Barbershop. The present moment was always painful. So she started to distract herself by staring only at the shape of the letters, the outside shape. As the driver raced along, she could only catch a glimpse of the shape, but she made believe she was spying on the letters if the letter were a someone. There was a curve, or a double curve, of the letter B that was shaped like a pair of breasts, her own breasts even, that she would look at often in the mirror because she was getting so thin, but ooh, she shouldn't think of that. Then there was the awful way that one line crossed into another and even overtook it. This bothered her because she felt her own body was losing its meaning. In time, she cured herself of being able to decipher the letters, but she had to keep relearning how not to read. When the meaning of words threatened to come back, she would stare at the inside of her sunglasses, looking at the pattern of colors on the backs of the Polaroid lenses. Thank you.
Hi. Hi, Jessie. This is called bedtime. Feed them snacks, brush their teeth, give them a bath, go potty. Pajamas, read stories, sing songs, hugs and kisses, bedtime. Repeat. The dad sits in his faux leather banana chair, rocks maniacally back and forth, grips the black controller two-handed, plays his Xbox until anywhere between 1 and 3, with all the lights in the house off. The gray glow comes off the screen and a quivering bubble encases him in Skyrim. Repeat. The mom stacks all the pillows behind her in bed, bolsters her up. She devours Love in Handcuffs, its worn-out cover perpetually curling away from its pages, narrow binding a series of cracked fissures. Her eyes droop without her consent. Repeat. When he climbs into bed beside her, she has been asleep, flat on her back for a while already. He folds her in his heavy limbs like sodden logs. She wakes, turns over into a ball. She doesn't dislodge him. Repeat. She can't get back to sleep tonight. Her skin burns sweaty under his. She reaches for the metal touch lamp on her bedside table, and when her soft index finger touches its base, it shocks her, him by association. Thank you.
Mine doesn't have a title. Arguments for and against have been rehashed over and over again. One side using logic, the other using religion. Cries of Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, are heard escaping from juvenile mouths. From people who advocate love thy neighbor, slurs such as fag and dyke spew forth. When will this hypocrisy end? When will the mass of bigots realize that the things they are doing are wrong? When will we stop getting hate for loving someone? When will I stop having to fear my own family because I love the same gender? When will I be able to walk down the street holding the hand of a future girlfriend and not get glares or judgmental looks? When will we stop having to hide who we are for fear of hate crime? I don't want to wait. I don't want to be patient. I deserve to be free with my love like all you straight people. I am not a sin. I am not evil. I am not unnatural, but I am angry, and I have every damn right to be. I am a human being, but I do not have all the rights of one. Throughout our history from the settlement of America, one group after another has been dehumanized, treated as lesser, treated as wrong. Racism, sexism, and now homophobia are all part of that long legacy. When will this pattern end? When will the day come that I can be myself without fear of persecution? My life, love, and liberty is just as important as anyone else's. Why can't I have my basic constitutional right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? I deserve to be able to live my life to the fullest. I don't care if you disagree with my lifestyle. I may disagree with yours. But you don't force your beliefs on me. Don't force your Bible on me. Religious beliefs is not a valid argument. Just because that's what you live by doesn't mean I have to. I grew up religious. My parents are very religious. They consider what I am a sin, making me feel as if I'm not okay, making me feel as if something is wrong with me, making me afraid to tell them the truth. I shouldn't have to be afraid. I shouldn't have to hide. I should be able to be true to myself no matter where I am, but I can't yet. But I can't wait until the day that I can.
Thank you, Anne and Jesse and Megan. Next we have Russ Beck, Dennis Hinkamp, and Ronald Jensen. And by the way, get some coffee. It's Cafe Ibis.
Here go, Master.
I am gigantic. I am gigantic.
We love you, Ross.
Okay. So good to be back. I miss this. I can't ever come because I have a baby, but this is so nice. So thank you for, yeah, this is so good. This has been great tonight. Thank you all. This has been fun. Liz, we miss you. Good grief.
Thank you. I miss you guys too.
Your voice is so weird. I was trying to, I had this like, no, it's so good. Weird is always good. No, it's always good. But like, I had this weird metaphor about nude paintings in your, but I'm not going to say it. But I think what it boiled down to, you don't want me to say it, I promise. It boiled down to is it's like your writing is both like timely and timeless, which is a bad, bad, hard thing to describe. But I think that's what it is. You know, I mean, it's like, yeah. Nude paintings with clothes on. Oh. So, but it went further than that, but I'm not going to do that anymore. So, but it's really good. I'm so glad you're here. It was very nice to hear you. I am actually going to, what happened? I hate to do this, read it off of my phone. I actually had it somewhere else, but that didn't work. Cancel, go away. I had this all figured out, and now I don't. Dennis, do you want to go? And then I'll figure this out. Is that okay? I hate to keep that jerk, but is that okay? Are you okay with that? And then I'll go after you. So,
thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, you're welcome. Dennis.
Most of the stuff I write has some kind of point in time, so it helps if I preface it that this is back in November earlier this last year, back when the air was clear and there was hope in sight. Anyway, it's called Nativity Scene with the S-E-E-N. So I saw Mary and Joseph at Deseret Industries today. They weren't shopping on their way back from a Christmas pageant. They entered the building ingloriously carried by a young woman in her trademark DI red smock. She walked through the store with Mary under one arm and Joseph under the other. They were escorted back to the bargain room of the bargain store. I followed them there through the store and watched her set them down amidst the rusted bikes, golf clubs, and waffle makers. Sometimes metaphors slap you. Joseph and Mary in their scuffed plastic holiness with no proper place to spend the night. They had been less worn or faded. They might have been on a display in a fancy department store or featured in front of City Hall. It evoked certain sadness seeing them there plastically frozen in their prayerful position with baby Jesus nowhere to be seen. What kind of holy, unholy person would not donate the entire set? There were no wise men, manger, or farm animals. True, it was not yet even December. Somehow I imagined that them staying there unappreciated and unpurchased and undisturbed until Christmas Eve. Then, all alone in the cold, dark DI, baby Jesus arrives in the last batch of unsorted donations to an audience of risen souls of the detritus of our lives. I imagined the pile of dusty, discarded stuffed animals coming to life to witness the event and to recreate the nativity scene in the 24th century animated style under the flickering fluorescence of the store's night lighting. Various mannequins stand in for wise men, and the gifts of the Magi are costume jewelry, spent VHS tapes, and other glittery refuse. I had a catatonic moment as I envisioned this. Luckily, this is hardly noticeable in Deseret Industries. I stood there for a few minutes longer as the pre-holiday shopping masses swirled around me looking for just that right piece of Tupperware to complete their set or the warm coat that they couldn't afford new. I silently count among my blessings that I shop in DI for fun, not because I have to. There's still sacred objects that probably shouldn't be cast off in a thrift store boneyards. Or maybe that is a perfect metaphor for our times. If the nativity story were updated, a flesh and blood Joseph and Mary would have traveled by Greyhound bus and could not afford to stay anywhere other than a motel with bed bugs. So maybe being relegated to the back of Deseret Industries isn't so bad. I snap back to reality and briefly consider taking the two home with me, but decide that they serve a higher purpose, staying right where they are.
Okay, again, I apologize for all this in the phone thing. I don't like doing that. This is the only thing I've ever written about sports ever, and I wrote it a couple of years ago, and I've never read it, and I wanted to read it. The lesson here is I don't write about sports, but if somebody comes to you and says, hey, do you want to write about sports? You say, yeah, I'd love to write about sports. So do that if you're writing. Okay. I grew up knowing that real men castrated sheep, lifted hay bales above their heads, killed deer on dead runs, and cried in public. Not just cried, not snivels, not single tears rolling down cheeks, but full-on red-faced, snot-covered bawling. Once a month in the Mormon church, members are invited to testify of the things they believe. This usually results in tears from toddlers, mothers, and men. Remember, Mormonism is a religion that leans heavily on patriarchal order. Women aren't allowed to hold the highest position in the church, or even the second, third, fourth, or fifth highest position. And yet many men still monthly do something that is viewed by most as being unmanly, even womanly. Because I was raised in the heart of Mormondom in the geographic center of Utah, it took TV years to teach me that crying wasn't manly. The Duke boys didn't cry, the Fall Guy didn't cry, but the Vietnam vet who lived down the road did cry. We've had 2 criers in sports. This is the sports stuff. This is, see, you bend it to make it whatever you want it to be about. Okay. We've had 2 criers in sports lately. They've received a fair amount of flack. Bubba Watson winning the green jacket and Vernon Davis catching the winning pass to progress the 49ers past the Saints in this year's NFL playoffs. It's a couple years ago. I watched the Niners game with a buddy, and when Davis, oh, he's here. Hey, Steve. It's my... watched the game with watched the Niners game with a buddy, and when Davis ripped off his helmet and sobbed, we both looked at each other, then looked back to the screen and avoided eye contact. Later, we admitted to holding back emotion that for some reason we were ashamed to have. I talked with another friend who has worked as a butcher, played hockey, and has substantial facial hair about this catch. He said it was beautiful. He watched it over and over again, then he wrote a poem about it. I'm not kidding, he read it here one time, actually. A poem might be the most appropriate response to this kind of emotion. Maybe we are finally letting men be more than just men, but humans too. I remember crying twice during church. Once when someone hurt my feelings, I ran to the parking lot and hid. And once when I was leaving on my 2-year Mormon mission. I hoped that I was crying because of belief, because I had a burning desire to teach people about the truth I was raised with. But thinking on it now, it probably had more to do with the fact that I was leaving girls, basketball, fishing, and everything that was familiar to enter a foreign land to do something I had never done before. I was scared. I cried because I hoped I was going on a mission for the right reasons. I cried because I didn't know what else to do. Even though I didn't cry often in church, I never thought that those that did cry should be ashamed. And I don't think Davis or Watson should be ashamed either. It seems that two camps have cropped up on the Watson-Davis crying issue. Those who think the athletes should be praised for showing feelings, and those who poke fun at the athletes for crying. I'm not sure either are right. We should look at these moments for what they are, significant. We should feel grateful that we were able to witness these things with them. When your profession hits extremes highs or lows, you're going to show emotion more emotion than a shrug or a high five. Athletes should be allowed the same, even though they're playing in a very public venue. David Foster Wallace wrote about why memoirs written by athletes usually weren't very good. He said because athletes train themselves away from their emotions when it counts, they can't really get back to the emotions when they sit down to write. They set up and sink putts, catch passes, hit balls, then they move on emotionless so they can quickly do it again. Perhaps Davis and Watson will initiate a new kind of athlete. They didn't. When I didn't cry in church, I thought I was the one who should be ashamed, not the ones crying. Although I never remember it being explicitly stated, I believed the more someone cried in church, the more they believed. And that's all I wanted. I wanted to believe what my ancestors believed. I wanted to know what made my great-grandmothers walk across a continent, what made my great-grandfathers sell successful businesses and farms and move to a desert. I wanted to shake in those uncontrollable sobs to have my speech awkwardly punctuated by gasps, but it never happened. So that's it. Yeah.
I had a good year in 2013. When I was training. One thing led to another until I finally met a mother. Now we are married, no longer courting. It's the greatest thing to come in 2014. Put up on the treasure. A greedy man style never fell. Walking down the road, he said, I would like to have a pot of gold. And the son said, it was gold that you like. And follow this rainbow, you don't mind the hike. So I followed the rainbow till it came to an end. Hoping to find lots of money to spend. When we reached the end, what did you see? The elementary school, surrounded by trees. The man said, where's the gold? We've come a long way. Now I see you didn't pay. But McCon appeared and said, you fool, you can't get your shirt and find in school. But there you find children, sweet as pie. Give love and joy, the money can't buy.
Thank you, Ron. That poem, The Leprechaun, is actually on one of our first broadsides, and that's so cool that you recited those tonight. Didn't even have to read them. Thank you. And thank you, Russ. And I'm glad you finally found that, because that was really sweet. And thank you, Dennis. Come back again. We like your stuff. I have room for more readers. We have a couple more readers on the list, but would anyone else like me to put their name down? Tim? No? Great. You are on, Tyson. Okay, and I might invite, anybody else want to be brave?
I'll do it.
What's your name?
My name is Zach.
Zach. Okay. Yeah, we've got time. Okay. Let's go that far and see what happens. So next we have our own Caitlin, who is doing the blog for Helicon West. And by the way, Jessie, who read that great piece about the tucking kids in, etc., with the repeat, is our video person, and she's our videographer who is going to put together a book of the people of Helicon West. And so those of you who said yes to an interview, she'll get around to you, and you can be profiled. And you can be on a broadside, which Brian does if you read at Helicon West and then submit your work to me. So come and see me if you want to be on a broadside. Like Ron. Caitlin, and then Brittany, and then Tyson. Did I say that Caitlin does the blog? Okay. Caitlin, Brittany, Tyson.
Okay. So I took a brief stint where I didn't read creative nonfiction, and now I'm coming back to it. So yeah, this is from a memoir I've been working on for a while. To give you some background, it's about a relationship that I had when I was significantly younger to a guy who's significantly older. So just so you have that background, because I don't say it here, but yeah. Okay, and it's also in short little vignettes. So, beauty. When Adam drives me home, he often takes Wasatch Boulevard, the lane that hugs the dips and curves of the mountain benches that lie between our houses. As he drives, I look past him out the window, out west. Salt Lake spreads below us, a garden of buildings sprouting all the way to the Oka Mountains. As winter melts into spring, the evening strikes longer, and we often drive home during sunset. I watch as the sun, too bright to watch head-on, drips towards the horizon. It looks heavy, tired, like a child's head dropping off to nap. The sky stains orange and yellow. Glass screams blinding white. Trees turn to silhouettes. Everything not shaded in black bathes in a citrus glaze. You're really beautiful, you know, Adam says. We're at a stoplight, and he laces his fingers through mine over the center console of his Jeep. He traces his thumb on my knuckle. Beautiful. No one has ever called me beautiful before, besides my mother, who is biologically and morally obligated to think that I am. I'm cute when anyone notices me at all. I'm a cute, hyper-blonde girl who loves pink and has hips that force me into size-11 jeans when all my friends wear 7s. My breasts are small. I barely fill out a B cup, and I always wear underwire. I don't know how to apply makeup or straighten my hair. While I'm not invisible to the boys at school, when they talk to me, it's about video games, anime characters, grunge music. They fold me into their group, not as a love interest, but as one of them. Earlier, when Adam kissed me on his green pod sheets, he pulled his fingers through the hair he unloosed from my ponytail, then ran a finger under the rim of my bra, nuzzling the nipples hidden underneath. He kissed my stomach, caressed, never touched skin. He tugged at the waistband of my jeans, trying to ease them over my thighs, but I stopped him. Too fast, I said, and he nodded, disappointment shading his face. He moved his hands back to my hips, and we lay together on his bed. Shifting clouds lightened and darkened his room. He kissed my collarbone. He wanted me. Before the light turns green, I catch my reflection in the yellow-tinted lenses of his sunglasses. My hair, still unfurled, laps up my shoulders. My smile is loose, relaxed, and my eyes disappear into slits, buoyed by full cheeks. For a brief moment, I see what he sees. I believe he thinks I'm beautiful, that he wants me, that he loves me. I believe I love him too. The light shifts green. The car lurches forward, and he tugs away from my hand to place both hands on the wheel. I don't let go, however. I tighten my grip, pull our hands into my lap. I don't want to let go. Numb. Adam's father died 6 months before I met him. Suicide, he told me, an overdose. Adam found him dead in his bed. I imagined him sitting up on pillows, regal, his hands splayed to the side, as though gesturing to everything he had left behind. No one knew why. Adam talks about him like he was a hero in the same sentence he spat hatred for him. He was abusive. He cuffed his ears and called him worthless, horrible, a waste of space. Adam's glad he died, though he hates what he did to his mother. He hates that his father left him and her to grieve in a 3-story mansion that holds more poison than people. One day, Adam takes me to his father's office, burrowed in the basement. It is untouched. The air still tings with his cologne, and a leather armchair in the corner waiting for a recipient. He sits on the arm as he pulls at the spines of books bowing the bookshelves. He is an anesthesiologist. It's the most important job at the hospital, to make sure someone is asleep, but not for forever. The thought scares me. I watch his hand glide across gilded pages from left to right, stroking the words, as though trying to soak up ink, and imagine a man standing over me, masked, sliding a tube over my mouth and nose, not knowing if I'd ever wake up and see anything but fluorescent lights and foreign eyes. "We should take a shower," he said suddenly, and I look up from the heavy book in my lap. How will I explain wet hair to my mom? I have to go home in an hour. He's never seen me completely naked. I don't know if my underwear matches. I'm not ready for this. We can keep it dry, he prods, kissing my neck and tugging at the bottom hem of my shirt. But I imagined him earlier, looking so wounded about his dad. His eyes looked far away then. Maybe he needed comfort right now. Maybe this would help. Okay, I guess. I allow him to steer me up 2 flights of stairs into his parents' bathroom, past the bed where he found his dad, where a shower the size of my bedroom gleams in afternoon sunlight. Nothing but showering, though, I say, and he nods at me. Of course, we won't do anything you're not ready for. He strips quickly. I look at a spot above his head as I step out of my panties and unhook my bra. I squeeze my thighs together and hug my arms, trying to hide my breasts and my stomach. I know he's looking at every inch of me, taking it in. I'm painfully aware that I haven't shaved. The water feels warm and soft on my skin. There isn't enough spray for us both, so Adam stands behind me, spreading his fingers and massaging wet hands against my hips and stomach. He presses against me, clipping my ear with his teeth, moving his hand south. I squirm. His penis presses into my back, and I don't like the weight on me, but the water is warm and his hands feel good, and the sun makes everything in the room look so soft, so I let him. And my hair gets wet, dripping wet. When we step out, water splashes onto the bathroom floor, and he drops a towel down to soak it up. He wraps another around me, rubbing my arms dry. He kisses the mole on my breast before picking my clothes up off the closed toilet. I don't look at his body. I feel it, certainly. He pressed so close to me, the only thing separating our skin was water. But I don't look. not once. Prude. Hallie loses her virginity to Derek, Anne's other brother, the summer before sophomore year starts. She brags about it in garish detail, her words dripping onto the carpet. She was high and drunk, and so was he. He's almost 10 years older than her. I think of how many secrets Hallie keeps, and how our entire friendship is based on secrets and sex, but only hers. Hallie notices my contemplation and curls her lip in disgust. She wronged you for you? No. She sighs, disgusted. God, you're such a prude, Caitlin. She only uses my real name when she's mad at me. I'm not a prude. Whatever, you've only kissed Adam. He told me. You're such a tease. Adam lied, I want to scream at her. Adam showed me the condoms in his closet the first time I came over. Adam bought me thongs and asked me to model them. Adam got to third base in a mall bathroom last week, and again late at night over the weekend with you sleeping in the back seat. I know just as much about what men taste like as you do. Instead, I say nothing. Bored by silence, Hallie continues talking about her first moments. She lays the details on the bed in front of her like she is unpacking her internal organs and laying them on the white sheets. She wants me to caress them, hold them in my hands and consider their weight. She wants me to do the same for her, but I don't. I keep my secrets hidden inside my ribcage, preferring to think about them only on my own. If I tell someone, it makes it real. I don't know what to do with real.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys, this is too good for me. I really hope I don't, because I actually, never mind. So my first poem's a breakup poem. It sucks. It's called 9 Days Later. I can't breathe or read or see without feeling my weakness on my lips. I am the devil to your ambrosia. I will wake up tonight and wonder where my strength came to wake up. I will wonder how my heart can beat in all its efficient glory, shameless at the way it runs my fingers through your hair. You will hold my hand and I will hold it back, because inside I halfway want to die. You can't make me feel alive, but I'm afraid to let you know that. I don't belong to you, yet I will offer my body up on a wooden pike and say, forgive me, for I am about to sin, and I will not stop until I have had my fill or you think I could love again. But love belongs to a girl who used to feel like a woman who hasn't drowned herself yet. I am but a woman who remembers what it feels like to crush a girl. Crush. But this next one's better. This is like the best love poem ever, okay? Ready? It's called My Roma. She was at the point in her life where she had to live passionately or die disgustingly. And I caught her at her rustic prime, so full and robust in my hands and so ready for me to make something of her. With a plunge, I was in, and she was more beautiful than God. She was rich, and she was soft, and I peeled back her skin with my teeth. And it was in that moment that I knew I would spend the rest of my life looking, but when she was gone, I would never come this close to life again. If I ever loved, it was then that she gave me every part of her in a burst, because I was her last affair. Everything I'd ever looked for was here, and I cried her name at the top of my passion. And then she was gone. Nothing left but a tingle on my lips. She was a part of me now. That's about a tomato, guys.
I'm Tyson Steele. This is a poem called Shooting My Dying Dog. More like a sick cow than a beagle, grazing and mooing with bloated pain, she zigzagged over the alpine grasses to the shallow hole where I kneeled. She limped, her joints arthritic and cold at 11,000 feet, cancerous knobs reaching out from her fur, distended black with brittle crisps of blood. I leaned down and we touched noses for a moment, her tongue licking once, a kiss goodbye as if she knew what was about to happen. I nestled her into the hole and cocked my pistol. Fingers trembled, then delayed. The cartridge hushed in its chamber, held back like my tears. I couldn't do it, and I couldn't watch either. So Dad took the gun, and I heard a hasty pop as I looked away. Seemed like it should have been louder. A 9mm burst, followed by a ringing deafness. But no, it sounded more like bubble wrap, pressed too tight, unresounding and echoless. The dog flailed out of the pit in spasms, then collapsed slowly and sunk back in. With shovel sprayed red, Dad draped the soil over her still breathing body. Just nerves, he said, just nerves. When the earth stopped gasping, I stacked up a granite-like grave, and upon the rocks, a fistful of white, dime-sized flowers, and a dry, gray root of a lodgepole pine carved with her name.
Hello.
Hi,
My name is Zach. Yeah, never done anything like this before. So, but if it's bad and you guys don't like it, seriously, boo me off. Just brutally honest. That's what I want you guys to do. So we're starting small. This is a poem I wrote called "The Matterhorn." The happiest place on earth turned to tragedy. My younger self looking up at the sign, closed for maintenance. There is no God.
We needed that, Zach. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tyson and Brittany and Caitlin, Kitty. We're going to come back next week, okay? And we'll have Darren, and bring your friends and bring more of your work. This has been wonderful. Thank you for coming to Helicon. And see you next week. And Liz, thank you so much.
Thank you.